Most recall videos blur together. A warning light comes on, a letter shows up in the mail, and owners assume the fix can wait until next weekend. But some recalls are different. Some are serious enough that manufacturers and safety regulators tell owners to stop parking inside, stop charging overnight, or keep the vehicle away from buildings until repairs are done. These are the vehicles tied to some of the most alarming park outside or fire risk advisories in recent years. Some are older electric vehicles with battery defects, some are new plug-in hybrids, some are ordinary gas SUVs and trucks with electrical components that can overheat while parked. And in a few cases, the problem was so ugly that the first fix did not fully solve it. One quick point before we start. This video is not saying every example of every model will burn down. It is saying these vehicles were serious enough to trigger official recall action, strong parking guidance, or repeated concern about fire risk while parked or recently shut off. If you own one of them, smartest move is simple. Check your VIN, read the recall notice carefully, and do not assume somebody else already handled it. The worst cases do more than trigger one warning letter. They destroy trust in the vehicle itself. Let's start with one of the most unsettling cases on the board, because it involves a vehicle that was barely old enough to lose the new car smell. The Volvo EX30 was supposed to be an affordable, safety-branded EV entry point. Instead, certain vehicles were hit with a battery-related recall that led to strict charging guidance and park-outside caution. The timing makes the whole thing unsettling. Buyers stepping into a brand new EV do not expect to hear words like battery fire risk and charge limit in the same breath. Yet that is what some owners got. The concern centered on internal battery behavior that could raise the risk of overheating under the wrong conditions, and the interim advice was the kind of thing that immediately changes how people live with the car. A brand new EV only works if owners trust it enough to charge it, store it, and leave it parked without thinking twice. The moment that trust disappears, the appeal of the vehicle changes. Instead of convenience, you get anxiety. Instead of a clean overnight charge routine, you get caution tape behavior around your own driveway. If you are shopping used or nearly new in the future, this is exactly the kind of story that makes documentation matter. A pretty crossover with the right price can still be the wrong purchase if the recall history is messy. The Hyundai Tucson shows how a problem that sounds minor on paper can turn ugly in real life. This was not an engine teardown issue or a giant battery pack story. It was trailer hitch wiring and related module hardware that could let moisture in, create electrical shorts, and raise the risk of fire. A family SUV can feel perfectly normal in daily use, then suddenly become a park-outside vehicle because of dealer-installed or accessory-related hardware sitting out of sight. Owners do not even need to be towing anything when the problem shows up. That unpredictability is part of what makes the recall so unsettling. The hitch setup can still be there, energized and vulnerable, even when no trailer is attached. Many owners added the tow package on purpose. Bike racks, cargo carriers, small trailers, family trips, all of that feels like normal practical ownership. Then the same option package that made the SUV more useful becomes the reason it cannot sit comfortably inside the garage. For owners and shoppers, the point is straightforward. Accessories and dealer-installed hardware are not harmless side notes. They can create their own recall story, and sometimes that story is serious enough to change where the vehicle sleeps at night. BMW ended up in the conversation too, with a starter motor-related fire recall affecting a large pool of vehicles across several model lines. On paper, the percentage of affected cars might look small. In real life, nobody wants to gamble on whether their premium sedan or SUV is the one that overheats in the driveway. This recall hit a nerve because it clashes with the entire premium car promise. Owners are paying for engineering polish, quality control, and that sense that everything is tighter, smarter, and more dependable than the average vehicle. Then a fire risk recall shows up tied to a component that can corrode, short, and overheat. Supply chain parts can spread trouble across brands and body styles faster than most drivers realize. One defective or vulnerable component can pull multiple models into the same mess. This is not just about a single sedan or crossover. It is about how a flaw in a key electrical part can turn a big slice of a premium lineup into a park-outside conversation. If you are a used buyer, this is exactly the kind of recall that gets missed, because the car still looks clean, drives fine, and feels expensive. That does not mean the recall history is clean. This is one of the more frustrating modern recall stories because these were mainstream new vehicles that owners had every reason to trust. Certain Hyundai models, including the Tucson, Palisade, and Sonata, were swept into a recall over an electric oil pump controller issue that could overheat and raise the risk of fire. This problem hits hard because it does not fit the stereotype people carry in their heads. When drivers hear fire risk, they often picture high-mileage beaters, modified vehicles, or complex EV battery stories. They do not picture a family SUV or a nearly new sedan sitting quietly after a school run. Recalls like this get attention because they break the idea that everyday vehicles are automatically low drama. Many owners were still in the honeymoon phase. New car payment, fresh interior, maybe only a few thousand miles on the odometer, then suddenly the advice becomes park it outside and wait for parts or dealer action. That changes the whole ownership mood overnight. And when the same type of defect spreads across multiple model lines, it raises a quality control question that brands hate hearing. Was this just bad luck, or did too many vehicles leave the line with the same vulnerable component before anyone stopped it? The Kia side of the same oil pump problem may look like a repeat, but it carries its own damage. Kia owners of certain Seltos and Sportage models got dragged into the same kind of fire risk warning tied to the electric oil pump controller. Different badge, same anxiety. The problem gets more expensive than the repair itself once a driver hears park outside because of potential fire risk. The vehicle stops feeling like a normal appliance. It becomes something you plan around that changes habits, insurance conversations, resale confidence, and the way owners talk about the brand to other people. The Seltos and Sportage are not niche halo cars. They are practical vehicles bought by normal households that want simplicity, warranty coverage, and predictable daily use. The warning lands hard for exactly that reason. Nobody buying a new compact or small SUV wants to hear that the vehicle now comes with parking instructions like a suspicious lithium battery shipment. The trust damage quickly becomes bigger than the part itself. Shared components across brands can make engineering and production more efficient, but when something goes wrong, the damage spreads just as efficiently. One defect can suddenly become a cross-brand headline and a public relations mess for both sides at the same time. Heavy-duty truck recalls disrupt more than convenience. For owners of certain Ram 2500 and 3500 heavy-duty models, the intake heater relay fire problem was not just annoying. It could interfere with work, towing, storage, and the daily routine of people who actually depend on their truck to earn money. A contractor, rancher, farmer, or fleet operator does not hear park outside the same way a city commuter does. If that truck normally lives near a shop, barn, warehouse, or job site equipment, the fire risk becomes more than a home garage issue. It becomes an operations issue. A heavy-duty diesel truck is often loaded, parked with gear, or staged for the next morning's work before sunrise. Anything that forces it out into the open or makes owners question whether it is safe near other vehicles or buildings creates real consequences beyond inconvenience. And because these trucks are expensive, the anger lands differently. People are not just upset about safety. They are upset that a high-dollar work tool suddenly feels like a liability. The Chevrolet Bolt story became one of the defining EV recall stories of the last few years. Fire risk, battery cell defects, park outside guidance, charging restrictions, huge replacement costs, and even reports of fires after earlier fixes. It was the kind of recall that turned a promising EV success story into a national warning label. The Bolt story changed how regular drivers think about battery recalls. Before the Bolt, many people heard battery issue and assumed software tweak. After the Bolt, battery issue started sounding like something that could change where you park, when you charge, and whether the vehicle is safe near your home. This was not a tiny obscure campaign. It was broad, expensive, and public enough that parking garages, apartment residents, and overnight chargers all ended up talking about it. It turned into a reference point for how bad an EV battery recall could get. Even now, this is one of the best examples of why used EV buyers need paperwork, battery history confidence, and proof that the recall remedy was actually completed. Cheap entry price alone is not a deal if the history behind the battery is messy. The Hyundai Kona Electric became one of the early EV fire stories that really rattled confidence. The issue was serious enough that large-scale battery replacement became part of the response, and owners were told to think very differently about charging and parking until the remedy was handled. That is what made this case so damaging. Buyers did not expect a normal compact electric crossover to become part of a global battery fire headline. They expected something simple, efficient, and affordable to run. Instead, the recall story turned into the kind of thing people discussed in terms of battery suppliers, internal shorts, and whether the vehicle should be anywhere near the garage overnight. Used buyers still need to care about this story just as much as people did when it first broke. A vehicle can look perfectly normal in a listing and still have a recall history that deserves close attention. If the battery replacement or remedy trail is unclear, that uncertainty matters. This is also one of the clearest reminders that not all EV recall stories are the same. Some are software, some are charging guidance, and some force the manufacturer into the expensive reality of replacing major hardware because trust in the original pack is gone. A Chrysler Pacifica Hybrid is where the recall pattern starts feeling truly exhausting, because it was not just recalled once, it turned into one of those nightmare cases where earlier remedies were criticized, newer actions followed, and owners were still being told to park outside and stop charging while everyone waited for the latest solution. The Pacifica recall hurts because families buy hybrid minivans for calm, practical, low-drama transportation. School runs, groceries, vacations, daily routine. The Pacifica Hybrid was supposed to be the easy family efficiency play. Instead, some owners got years of recall churn tied to a vehicle they were counting on to be the least dramatic thing in their life. And because it is a family vehicle, the emotional side hits harder. Parents are not just thinking about resale or inconvenience. They are thinking about whether the minivan is safe in the driveway, whether charging is okay, and whether this thing can be trusted for the next trip. Repeated recall attention also does something brutal to confidence. It teaches owners not to believe the first fix, which is probably the worst place any automaker can end up in a fire risk story. The Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe is where premium pricing and recall anxiety collide. This was supposed to be the upscale, efficient, electrified SUV answer for buyers who wanted comfort, space, and a taste of electric driving without giving up Jeep branding. Instead, it got pulled into a fire risk battery recall, serious enough to produce park outside and do not charge guidance. A plug-in hybrid sells itself on flexibility, quiet electric miles during the week, gas backup when needed, and the convenience of charging at home. But if owners are being told not to charge and not to park near structures, the entire value proposition gets flipped upside down. These are not low-cost vehicles. Buyers spending serious money on a premium SUV do not expect to end up with a vehicle that suddenly feels like a parked risk. And because this issue sits close to the battery story that also hit the Wrangler 4xe, it starts to look less like a one-off and more like a broader Jeep plug-in trust problem. The brand damage here is not theoretical. It lands exactly where premium buyers are least tolerant: trust, convenience, and safety. The Jeep Wrangler 4xe battery fire recall matters because the vehicle at the center of the problem is not just another model. The Wrangler is an icon. That matters. When a normal commuter crossover gets a recall, the story is bad. When one of the most recognizable adventure vehicles in America gets tied to repeated fire risk headlines, the damage cuts deeper. The Wrangler 4xe story became especially ugly because prior action and prior fixes were part of the conversation. Once owners start hearing that the problem has come back, or that the latest remedy still has people waiting for the next step, confidence gets shredded. And with a plug-in hybrid, the pain is even more obvious because the whole electric side of the ownership experience becomes compromised. People who bought a 4xe for silent electric commuting, trail image, cool factor, and fuel savings can end up doing the exact opposite: not charging it, parking it outside, and treating it like a vehicle they do not fully trust. It is not just a recall, it is a recall that attacked the identity of the vehicle itself. The Jeep 4xe story does not stop with battery anxiety. It also rolls into engine-side fire risk and manufacturing defect concerns tied to contamination and failure inside the powertrain. That is what pushes this case from bad recall into full trust collapse territory. Think about how brutal that is from an owner's perspective. First, there is already a battery fire cloud hanging over the vehicle. Then a second fire-related recall shows up from a different direction. At that point, the issue is no longer just a single defect. The issue becomes whether the vehicle platform itself feels cursed. Two separate fire risk narratives around the same 4xe badge create the kind of ownership fear that is almost impossible to explain away with one service appointment. They damage charging confidence, mechanical confidence, resale confidence, and brand confidence all at once. And because these are expensive vehicles sold as modern, premium, adventurous, and family capable, the damage lands everywhere. Owners are not just wondering if the latest fix will work, they are wondering whether they should have trusted the vehicle at all. If there is one lesson from this entire list, it is this: the most dangerous recall story is not always the loudest one, it is the one that keeps coming back from a new angle. Taken together, the pattern is ugly. New EV anxiety with the Volvo EX30 2-hitch and accessory fire risk with the Tucson, premium brand recall pain for BMW, oil pump warnings for Hyundai and Kia, heavy-duty disruption with Ram, two of the biggest EV battery stories in the Bolt and Kona, repeated minivan recall frustration with the Pacifica Hybrid. And then the Jeep 4xe problem, where battery fire fear and engine fire fear start stacking on top of each other. The point is not that every owner should panic. It is that park outside warnings are the kind of recalls you do not brush off. If the notice says keep the vehicle away from structures, stop charging, or wait for a remedy, take that language seriously. Those are not casual suggestions. If you own one of these vehicles, check your VIN right now and confirm whether the repair was actually completed. If you are shopping used, ask for paperwork before you fall in love with the price. Because in this part of the car market, the cheapest deal can quickly become the most expensive headache.